What is a contract? A legally binding agreement between two or more parties. What are the essential elements of a valid contract? Offer, acceptance, consideration, legal capacity, lawful object, mutual consent. What is consideration in a contract? Something of value exchanged between parties. What does mutual consent mean? Both parties agree to the terms without duress, fraud, or misrepresentation. What is the statute of frauds? A law requiring certain contracts, including real estate, to be in writing. What is an express contract? A contract clearly stated in words, written or spoken. What is an implied contract? A contract formed by actions or conduct, not written or spoken terms. What makes a contract void? It lacks a legal requirement and is unenforceable from the start. What makes a contract voidable? One party has the option to rescind due to lack of capacity or other issues. What is an unenforceable contract? Valid in form but cannot be enforced by a court, e.g., oral real estate contract. Types of real estate contracts. What is a listing agreement? A contract between a seller and broker to market and sell property. What is a buyer representation agreement? A contract between a buyer and broker for representation in purchasing property. What is a purchase agreement? A binding agreement outlining terms of a property sale. What is a lease agreement? A contract granting use of property for a period in exchange for rent. What is an option contract? A unilateral contract giving the right to purchase at a later date. What is a land contract? A seller-financed agreement where the seller holds title until payment completion. What is a bilateral contract? A contract where both parties make promises. What is a unilateral contract? A contract where only one party makes a promise. What is a net listing? A listing where the broker keeps the sale price above a set amount. What is an exclusive agency listing? Seller can sell without paying commission if no agent is involved. Contract performance and breach. What is specific performance? A legal remedy forcing the breaching party to fulfill the contract. What is rescission? Canceling a contract and restoring parties to original positions. What is novation? Substituting a new party or agreement for an old one. What is assignment? Transferring contract rights to another party. What is a breach of contract? Failure to fulfill contract terms without legal excuse. What are liquidated damages? Pre-agreed amount to be paid in case of breach. What is time is of the essence? Deadlines in the contract must be strictly followed. What is contingency? A condition that must be met for the contract to be binding. What is earnest money? A deposit showing the buyer's good faith in a transaction. What is parole evidence rule? Oral statements cannot change a written contract. Agency and disclosure in contracts. What is a fiduciary duty? The obligation to act in the client's best interest. What is dual agency? One agent representing both buyer and seller. What disclosures are required in real estate contracts? Agency relationships, material facts, property conditions. What is a material fact? A fact that would affect a buyer's decision. What is puffing? Exaggerated opinion that is not legally binding. What is misrepresentation? A false statement that induces another to enter a contract. What is fraud in a real estate contract? Intentional deception for personal gain. What is undue influence? Unfair persuasion of a party under pressure. What is duress? Compulsion or threat to force agreement. When must lead-based paint disclosure be provided? For residential properties built before 1978. Important clauses. What is an as-is clause? Buyer accepts property in current condition. What is an escalation clause? Buyer agrees to increase offer if higher bid is received. What is a financing clause? Makes sale contingent on buyer obtaining a loan. What is a contingency removal? Buyer/seller formally waives a contingency. What is a title contingency? Buyer can cancel if title is not clear. What is a home inspection contingency? Sale depends on satisfactory property inspection. What is a right of first refusal? Gives a party first chance to buy if owner sells. What is a kick-out clause? Allows seller to accept backup offers during contingency. What is a prorations clause? Allocates expenses like taxes and rents at closing. What is a merger clause? Declares written agreement is the final and complete contract. Offer and acceptance. What is an offer? A proposal made with the intention to create a binding agreement upon acceptance. How can an offer be terminated? Revocation, rejection, counteroffer, lapse of time, or death of either party. What is acceptance? Unconditional agreement to all terms of an offer. What is a counteroffer? A new offer made in response to the original, rejecting the original offer. When is acceptance effective? When it is communicated to the offeror, mailbox rule may apply. What is the mailbox rule? Acceptance is effective when sent, not when received. What is revocation? Withdrawal of an offer before acceptance. What is a letter of intent, LOI? A preliminary agreement outlining terms before a formal contract. Can an offer be withdrawn after acceptance? No, unless both parties agree or a right to rescind exists. What is mutual assent? Agreement by all parties to the terms of the contract. Contract law concepts. What is capacity in contract law? Legal ability to enter into a binding contract. Who lacks legal capacity? Minors, mentally incompetent, intoxicated persons. What does competent parties mean? Parties legally able to contract. What is legal purpose in a contract? The object must be lawful, otherwise, the contract is void. What is a unilateral rescission? One party legally ends the contract due to the other's breach. What is ratification? Approval of a previously unauthorized act. What is reformation? A court changes a contract to reflect true intent. What is equitable title? Interest held by buyer once contract is signed but before closing. What is legal title? Ownership recognized by law, transferred at closing. What is a closing statement? A document itemizing all credits and debits in a real estate transaction. Closing and settlement. What is escrow? A neutral third party holds documents and funds until closing conditions are met. What is the purpose of title insurance? Protects against past title defects. What is a deed? A written instrument used to transfer title. What is recording? Placing a document into the public record to protect ownership. What is a closing disclosure, CD? A federally required form detailing all loan and transaction costs. What is a HUD-1 settlement statement? An older version of the closing disclosure, still used in some cases. Who pays transfer taxes? Typically the seller, but it may vary by agreement or local custom. What is a walkthrough inspection? Buyer's final check of the property before closing. What happens at closing? Documents are signed, funds are transferred, and title passes. What is possession? The right to occupy and use the property, often transferred at closing. State-specific contract requirements, general concepts. Do state laws regulate real estate contracts? Yes, each state has specific forms and rules. Is attorney involvement required in all states? No, it depends on the state. What is a standard form contract? A pre-written contract often provided by real estate boards or state agencies. Can licensees draft their own contracts? Usually not, only fill in blanks on approved forms. What is an addendum? A document that adds to or modifies a contract. What is an amendment? A formal change to a contract's terms after it's signed. What is a disclosure statement? A form revealing known material issues about a property. Are disclosure statements mandatory? In most states, yes. What happens if a seller fails to disclose a defect? They may be liable for damages or contract rescission. What is a cooling-off period? A set time during which a party may cancel a contract, applies in specific scenarios. Real-life application and ethics. Should a licensee give legal advice? No, only attorneys can provide legal advice. Can a real estate agent draft custom clauses? No, only fill in standard forms unless also a licensed attorney. What is a conflict of interest? When an agent's personal interests might interfere with client duties. Why are contract deadlines important? Missing deadlines can lead to default or loss of rights. Can a seller accept multiple offers? Yes, but must disclose and negotiate in good faith. When is a real estate contract executed? When all parties have signed it. When is a real estate contract fully performed? When all terms and obligations are fulfilled. Can earnest money be refunded? Yes, if buyer lawfully cancels under a contingency. What happens if a buyer defaults? Seller may keep earnest money, sue for damages, or enforce the sale. What is dual contract fraud? Creating two contracts to deceive a lender, illegal and unethical. Federal laws. What is the statute of frauds? A law requiring real estate contracts to be in writing to be enforceable. What is the purpose of the Truth in Lending Act, TILA? Ensures borrowers understand loan costs by requiring standardized disclosures. What is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, RESPA? Requires disclosures of settlement costs and prohibits kickbacks in real estate transactions. What document does RESPA require before closing? The closing disclosure, formerly the HUD-1 statement. What does TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure, TRID, rule require? Lenders must provide the loan estimate and closing disclosure to borrowers. What is the purpose of the Fair Housing Act in contracts? Prohibits discrimination in housing-related transactions. What is the lead-based paint disclosure rule? Requires disclosure of known lead-based paint hazards for homes built before 1978. What does the Dodd-Frank Act regulate in real estate finance? Mortgage lending practices and consumer protection through the CFPB. State contract laws and requirements, general. Who typically regulates real estate contracts at the state level? The State Real Estate Commission or Department of Real Estate. Are real estate agents allowed to draft custom legal contracts? No, they must use state-approved or attorney-prepared forms. What is the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, UETA? Allows electronic signatures to be legally binding in real estate contracts. What is the Uniform Vendor and Purchaser Risk Act? Assigns risk of loss before closing if property is damaged. Are verbal contracts enforceable in real estate? Usually known state laws require them to be in writing under the statute of frauds. Key government and regulatory agencies. What is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD? Oversees national policies on housing and enforces the Fair Housing Act. What is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB? Enforces federal consumer protection laws in financial and mortgage markets. What is the role of the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, in real estate? Prevents deceptive advertising and protects consumers from unfair practices. What is the function of a state real estate commission? Issues licenses, enforces real estate laws, and investigates complaints. What does the state attorney general do in real estate matters? Enforces state consumer protection laws and prosecutes fraud. What role do local zoning boards play? Regulate land use and enforce zoning laws affecting contracts for development. Can courts enforce or cancel real estate contracts? Yes, through remedies like specific performance or rescission.